The real estate agent's email landed in my inbox at exactly 3 a.m. Mrs. Walker. There seems to be some confusion. Your husband claims you've agreed to sell the house, but we need your signature to proceed with the closing. I stared at the screen, the soft glow illuminating the darkness of our kitchen, my kitchen, the hand-painted tiles, the herb garden window I'd designed myself, the warm oak cabinets I'd spent months refinishing. Upstairs, Mark slept soundly, believing me to be oblivious to his late-night scheming, but I'd been tracking his betrayal for months. My name is Rebecca Walker, and my husband of 15 years was about to learn the cost of underestimating me. The cracks in his facade started 6 months ago, small things at first, later work hours, hushed phone calls that ended when I entered the room, credit card charges he couldn't quite explain. Then came the shift in his attitude. The man who once praised my cooking suddenly found it lacking. My clothes were frumpy, my hobbies pointless. At first, I thought it was a midlife crisis. Then I found the receipt. A $122,000 purchase at Cartier, dated 3 days after he told me we needed to tighten our belts and cancel our anniversary trip. A bracelet, one I'd never received. That discovery unraveled everything: the hidden withdrawals, the hotel stays, the emails to real estate agents about selling our home, all sent from the private account he didn't know I could access. Becky? Mark's voice drifted down from upstairs. You coming back to bed? I shut my laptop and steadied my voice. Just getting some water. Be right up. I stood in the silence, gripping the edge of the marble countertop. This house wasn't just a structure, it was mine. I had poured my soul into every detail, every brushstroke. And Mark? He was trying to sell it from under me to bankroll his affair with a 23-year-old yoga instructor. What he didn't know was that I had been 2 steps ahead of him all along. The next morning, I watched from the window as he drove off, briefcase in hand, kissing me goodbye like nothing was wrong. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, I dialed my lawyer. Sarah, he's making his move, I said. I got the email last night. Perfect, she replied. Are you ready to go forward? I thought about the evidence I'd collected, the financial records, the screenshots of his messages to Jessica, the bank statements proving he'd been siphoning money into a separate account. Not yet. Timing was everything. No, I said, a slow smile curling my lips. Let him think he's winning. A text from my best friend, Lauren, buzzed onto my screen. Lauren, just saw Mark at that new bistro downtown. He's not alone. I asked for a picture, though I already knew what I'd see. And there it was, Mark, leaning in close to Jessica, her bleach blonde hair catching the sunlight, the Cartier bracelet winking from her wrist. Perfect. That evening, Mark came home late, reeking of expensive wine and perfume. He didn't notice how I'd rearranged my home office, locking my important documents away. He was too busy checking his phone, probably texting her. Busy day? I asked, setting his plate down, pot roast with roasted potatoes, his favorite. Yeah, he muttered, barely glancing up. Listen, Becky, we need to talk about the house. I widened my eyes, feigning uncertainty. The house? I'd been thinking, he continued, spinning the well-rehearsed lie. Maybe it's time for a change. The market's good right now, and this place is just too big for us. You want to sell? I whispered, letting my voice tremble just enough. He launched into a speech about downsizing, fresh starts, new opportunities. I nodded at all the right moments, all while my mind was 3 steps ahead. I've already spoken to a few agents, he admitted, testing my reaction. I blinked back fake tears, a trick I mastered in college theater. But this is our home, I whispered. We built this together. His hand landed on mine, a condescending pat. Sometimes we have to make tough decisions. Honey, trust me. Trust you? I yanked my hand back, letting the emotional wife act play out exactly how he expected, rushing from the table, sniffling as I fled the room. Once in our bedroom, I pulled out my phone and texted Sarah. He's making his pitch now. Time to move to phase 2. The following week passed in a blur of carefully orchestrated activity. Mark thought I was busy with design clients, but in reality, I was meeting with financial advisors, documenting his betrayal, and securing my own safety net. Lauren kept me updated on Mark's every move, lunch dates with Jessica, visits to high-end jewelry stores, a mysterious appointment at a luxury car dealership. He was spending money like it was nothing, probably promising Jessica the world. Then came the email I'd been waiting for. Mark had found a buyer for our house. A cash offer, well above market value. He forwarded me the details with a note. This is a great opportunity, honey, we need to move fast. I showed the email to Sarah, who gave me a thin, knowing smile. He really thinks she'll just sign everything over without checking the details? I sighed. He's never thought I could understand the complexities of our finances. I thought of the countless times he dismissed my concerns about our investments. That's about to change. That night, Mark was unusually attentive, bringing home my favorite wine, suggesting we eat on the patio. I knew exactly what was coming: the hard sell, the manipulation, the rehearsed arguments designed to make me agree to sell our home. The buyers need an answer by Friday, he said, refilling my glass. They're offering cash. Becky, we'd be fools to pass this up. I took a sip, studying him carefully in the dying light. The man who had been my partner for 15 years now seemed distant, his face harder, colder, every smile a mask for the lies he'd spun. You're right, I said softly, my voice deliberate. We would be foolish. His eyes lit up with triumph, failing to notice the ice in my tone. I'll have the papers drawn up tomorrow. We just need your signature and… No. I cut him off, my voice sharp and steady. We would be foolish to pass up this opportunity to expose exactly what you've been doing. The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the folder labeled Mark's Secret Life. Shall we start with the Cartier bracelet you bought Jessica, or the hotel receipts? Oh, and let's not forget the money you've been funneling into your private account, thinking I wouldn't notice. He jumped to his feet so quickly that his chair toppled over. You've been spying on me? No, Mark, I've been protecting myself. I locked eyes with him, unflinching. Did you really think I'd stand by while you sold our home to fund your midlife crisis? The next few hours were chaos. Mark alternated between fury and pleading, threats and promises, but I stood firm, knowing the power was now mine. When he finally stormed out at midnight, slamming the door behind him, I sent one final text to Sarah. He knows. Time for the endgame. The next morning, I woke to 37 missed calls from Mark, followed by a string of increasingly desperate texts. You're making a huge mistake. We can talk about this. Don't do anything stupid, Becky, the buyers won't wait forever. I smiled as I brewed my morning coffee in the kitchen I'd fought so hard to create. Mark had always underestimated me, assuming I was just a decorative housewife with no real substance. He'd forgotten that interior design required more than an eye for color. It required business savvy, and attention to detail, and the ability to read people. My phone rang again, Mark's number. I answered. The buyer pulled out. He said without preamble, thanks to your little tantrum, we just lost the best offer we'll ever get. Not we, Mark, I replied calmly, you lost the best thing you ever had. The house was just the final straw. He started to speak, but I cut him off. Check your email. I heard his sharp intake of breath as he opened the message from my lawyer, detailing every suspicious transaction he'd made with our joint funds over the past year. Every hotel booking. Every gift to Jessica. And, most importantly, the legal injunction preventing any sale of the house without court approval. You can't do this, he stammered. I already have. I let that hang in the air, then delivered the final blow. Oh, and Mark? Jessica called me this morning. The silence on the other end was deafening. She was quite surprised to learn you're still married, I continued. Apparently, you told her we'd been divorced for 2 years, which is why you couldn't introduce her to your friends or family. This was the moment Mark realized how thoroughly I'd dismantled his plans. What he didn't know was that I'd met with Jessica myself 2 days ago, showing her proof of his lies and manipulations. She's young, Mark, but she's not stupid, I said, my voice steady. When I showed her the records of how you'd been draining our retirement savings to fund your affair, she was horrified. Did you really think she'd want to be part of destroying someone's life? A loud crash sounded on the other end, Mark's legendary temper flaring. You've ruined everything, he screamed. No, you did that yourself, I said coolly. I just made sure I wouldn't go down with you. After hanging up, I walked through our house, my house now, touching the walls, the furniture, all the pieces of our life together that Mark had been willing to sacrifice for his midlife fantasy. Later that afternoon, Lauren came over, bringing wine and sympathy. How are you holding up? She asked. I poured us each a glass, settling into my favorite window seat. Better than I expected. She studied me, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. You know what the funny thing is? A year ago, this would have destroyed you. I thought about it, remembering the shock of finding that Cartier receipt. I realized I was worth more than Mark ever thought. I said quietly, "The moment I stopped trying to save our marriage and started protecting myself, everything changed." My phone buzzed, an email from Sarah. Update on the divorce proceedings. Mark's attempts to hide assets have backfired spectacularly, triggering a forensic audit of all his accounts. The judge was not amused by his financial manipulations. Miss Walker, she continued, given the evidence of financial misconduct, we're in a strong position to secure not only the house but a significant portion of all marital assets. Would you like to proceed? I typed a simple response, yes. The next few weeks were a blur of legal maneuvers and shocking revelations. Mark's carefully constructed world unraveled, piece by piece. His company launched an investigation into his expense accounts, uncovering years of questionable charges. Jessica, hurt and angry at his deceit, provided her own damning evidence of his lies. Through it all, I continued to manage my design business, securing a major contract to renovate a historic hotel. The client had specifically sought me out after seeing our house featured in a design magazine. The same house Mark had tried to sell behind my back. One evening, as I reviewed renovation plans in my home office, the doorbell rang. It was Mark. Disheveled, defeated. "Can we talk?" His voice was rough. I let him in, watching as his eyes roamed over the house, the new art on the walls, the rearranged furniture, all traces of him gone. He sank into a chair. "I messed up, Becky." I didn't respond. "Jessica's gone. The company suspended me pending their investigation. My lawyer says I'll be lucky if I don't face criminal charges for the financial stuff." I folded my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "What did you expect, Mark? That you could steal our future and I'd just accept it?" He ran a hand through his graying hair. "I thought. I don't know what I thought. That I deserved more. That you'd be lost without me." I laughed, the sound genuine and almost bitter. "That was always your problem. You saw me as an accessory to your life, not a partner. While you were busy destroying your success, I was quietly building my own." 3 months later, the final divorce settlement came through. I kept the house, my business, and the majority of our assets. Mark's financial misconduct had cost him dearly, not only in the settlement but in his career as well. As for Jessica, to her credit, she had turned her life around. She returned the Cartier bracelet and other gifts, using the money to start her own yoga studio. She even hired me to design the space. "I'm sorry," she said during our first design meeting. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I really thought he was divorced." I nodded, understanding. We both learned some hard lessons. The important thing is what we do afterward. A year after that night in the kitchen, when I first received the real estate agent's email, I stood in my garden, hosting a celebration. My design business had expanded, adding 3 new designers and launching a commercial division. The historic hotel renovation had won awards, bringing even bigger projects my way. Lauren raised her glass to new beginnings. As my friends and colleagues cheered, I looked around, at the home I fought to keep, the business I built, and the life I had reclaimed. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark's sister. "He's living in a small apartment now, working an entry-level job. Keeps saying he should have appreciated what he had." I didn't respond. Mark's regrets were no longer my concern. Instead, I turned back to my guests, raising my own glass. "To knowing your worth," I said, "and never letting anyone make you forget it." Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat in my garden, listening to the fountain I had installed, where Mark's prized grill used to stand. The stars shimmered above, the air was thick with the scent of jasmine I had planted last spring. My phone lit up. An email. Another client request. Life moved forward, bringing new opportunities, new challenges, new chances to prove what I was capable of. Mark had thought selling our house would fund his new life. Instead, his betrayal freed me to create something greater than I ever imagined. Sometimes, losing what you thought you needed makes room for everything you truly deserve. I ran my fingers over the warm stones of my house, feeling the strength of its foundation beneath my touch. Like me, it had weathered storms and emerged stronger. Every room now told a story, not of what was lost, but of what was gained the moment I finally stood up for myself. The next morning, I had 3 client meetings, 2 project reviews, and a consultation with a potential investor interested in expanding my business nationally. Mark's attempts to diminish me had only proven one thing: how much I could accomplish on my own. As I got ready for my day, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. A woman who had turned betrayal into triumph, pain into power. The house he tried to sell had become a symbol of my independence. And the life he tried to destroy had transformed into something far greater than his limited vision could ever have imagined. Because after all, the best revenge isn't just success. It's succeeding in ways your betrayer never thought possible.